Adam Sandler as the spawn of Satan, Minnie Driver as an obnoxious pageant hopeful, and John Travolta in dreadlocks. We set through all of those and less in the year 2000. I'm Roger Ebert, film critic for the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Richard Roeper, columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times. This week, we say good riddance to some truly awful films. We're calling this special show, We Hated These Movies.
On this special show, we get revenge against the movies that had us rolling our eyes, fidgeting in our seats, and snorting in disbelief all year long. So let's start right out with our first category, big stars in big bombs.
Alrighty, my nomination is Gone in 60 Seconds, starring Oscar winners Nicolas Cage, Angelina Jolie, and Robert Duvall in a race to see who can cash their fat paycheck with the least amount of embarrassment. Cage plays Memphis Reigns, a retired car thief who has to get back in the game to save his little brother from the clutches of a sneering villain. The high-concept hook, Cage and his ragtag team of hot-wiring vagabonds have to steal 50 cars in 72 hours or else. In the recent release, The Family Man, Nicolas Cage catches a glimpse of what his life would have been like had he married. In Gone in 60 Seconds, Cage finds out what his career would have been like had he starred in The Dukes of Hazzard.
On the other hand, I guess the movie made a lot of money, so his paycheck is not going to suffer, but boy, I did. Because, you know, this movie was completely brainless. It was absolutely nothing but kinetic activity. And believe me, once you've seen 1,000 car chases, you've seen them all.
That's the problem, though. You have a really talented cast making this movie, which makes it that much more offensive to me. Yeah,
because they're wasted. My nominee in the category Big Stars and Big Bombs would be What Lies Beneath, the Bob Zemeckis thriller that trapped Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer in a story of ghosts, creaking doors, and old crimes of passion. One of the film's weirdnesses is that Harrison Ford has to walk around pretending to be a good guy after the trailers and commercials have already revealed his secret. He acts warm and cuddly for the first half of the film.
Hello, Dr. Spencer.
Mrs. Spencer.
But okay, now I have here a 7-second soundbite from the press kit, and I want you to tell me whether it does or does not reveal both that he is evil and that the house is haunted.
You had an affair with a girl who threatened to kill herself, and now there's a presence in our house.
Any chance the movie has of suspense is destroyed because, of course, we're not fooled by Harrison Ford's nice guy act. And when she hears those mysterious creakings and thumpings, hey, didn't she see the trailer? We did. It's a ghost.
Well, you know, the only thing good about a trailer that gives away so much is that maybe some people didn't go see the whole movie and waste their time there. But I think of somebody like Harrison Ford doing the Cape Fear thing where he's underneath the car at one point. He's a smart guy, and he's got to be thinking to himself, what am I doing in this mess?
You know, the funny thing is Bob Zemeckis also directed Castaway, and the trailers for that movie spoil the suspense of whether or not Tom Hanks gets off the island. I don't understand the thinking here. Why not leave us something to find out after we've bought the ticket?
There you go.
Okay, new category. We're calling our next category of the year's worst movies, Divas Take a Dive, or Here Comes the Immaterial Girl. And my first entry in this division is perhaps the single worst biographical movie ever made. It's called Isn't She Great?, starring Bette Midler in the Jacqueline Suzanne story. In the film, Midler and Nathan Lane, who plays Suzanne's husband, actually pray to a tree.
I love her so much. And I think I can get her a TV commercial.
God wants to know what kind of a TV commercial.
Network, national.
How bad is Isn't She Great? Well, let me put it this way. Jacqueline Suzanne would have been embarrassed by this movie.
Probably the only way to make a movie like this is to have John Waters direct and some guy in drag playing Jacqueline Suzanne and just go for the pure camp. To try to do it as some sort of melodrama that wouldn't even categorize as a Lifetime movie of the week on TV. It's not even that good.
I'm sitting there, my jaw dropping open, because this movie is heartfelt.
Yeah, they mean it.
It thinks Jacqueline Suzanne was just this wonderful person.
They're serious about this movie. Same thing with our next movie. My nominee is Madonna in The Next Best Thing, in which she plays a limber yoga instructor quite a feat for such a wooden actress. This smug and preachy film combines a made-for-TV plot about a custody battle with an already tired trend in films. That's the attractive single gal whose best friend is fabulously gay.
Objection, Your Honor.
I said stop it.
Counsel, I suggest you confer with your client.
Do you want to win here, Abby?
You said he didn't have a chance. You don't have to kick the out of him.
This is the kind of self-aware performance she'd mock as dreadful and sanctimonious if it were somebody else flopping up there. For all her ability to reinvent herself as a pop icon every couple of years, Madonna as an actress has shown less growth than your average chia pet.
You know, this movie was utterly, completely absurd on the level that it was trying to perform on, including, you know, that limerick about they argued all night as to who had the right to do what and with which and to whom. That's what this movie was basically about. And at the end of the movie, I didn't care who they were, what they were doing, or who they were doing it with. I just wanted the movie to be over. This movie takes sex and turns it into some kind of a board game.
Yeah, and Madonna and Rupert Everett, good friends. They may think they have chemistry. They had none in this film.
Coming up next, successful movies lead to sequels, but these franchises are fried.
Our annual tribute to the worst films of the year is called We Hated, Hated, Hated These Movies, and the next category is Fried Franchises, proving once again that the sequel is almost never as good as the original. My nominee, Mission Impossible 2, a preposterous clunker directed by John Woo and starring Tom Cruise as a special agent who's about as vulnerable as the Terminator. The fight scenes are so silly, I almost expected badly dubbed subtitles. Ha! You think you are strong, but I am stronger. But the worst offense in MI2 was the comical dependence on the old rubber mask trick. Not once, not twice, but about a half dozen times. Good thing everybody has a backpack, the better to store all that latex.
You know, I didn't agree that this was one of the worst movies of the year. In fact, I gave it a thumbs up because I felt that it was better than the original Mission Impossible movie, and it finally got it right in terms of its basic escapist kinetic energy. I mean, if you're going to make a movie like this, make this one instead of Gone in 60 Seconds.
Well, I just think Mission Impossible is supposed to be the impossible mission force, not one guy who's completely invulnerable and can never get hurt or injured or destroyed in any way, and that's what Tom Cruise plays in this film.
But when you spend $20 million for your lead actor, you're not going to have a lot of other people on the screen. Call it something else. Okay, here we go with another series that has run out of steam, the Scream franchise. The original movie was a lot of fun with its characters who knew they were in a horror film, knew all the conventions of horror films, and talked about horror film cliches while they were standing in the middle of them. That was great, but by the time they got to Scream 3, they were reduced to discussing the rules involving the third part of a trilogy. This wasn't a horror movie, this was a pop culture seminar.
What do you know about trilogies?
You mean like movie trilogies?
You seem to like movies, Detective.
Well, all I know about movie trilogies is that in the third one, all bets are off.
For one brief, shiny moment, Scream seemed to have broken the hammerlock of stupidity that grips all dead teenager movies. And you know what a dead teenager movie is. That starts out with a lot of living teenagers, and they're killed off one by one, except for one character left standing at the end to be in the sequel. Scream was about slightly older dead teenagers who were in their 20s. And it was funny, but Scream 3, I think, has definitely reached the end of the line.
And even Scream 2, they did a nice job of acknowledging that it was a sequel and talking about that. But Scream 3 should have just been called Contractual Obligation, Scream 3. And that would have been the real truth about this movie. Just a formulaic thing, piece of junk.
Coming up next, two top stars give performances under so much makeup they were almost incognito. More of the worst when we come back. Continuing our special program on the year's worst movies, we're naming our next category, Who Was That Masked Man Anyway? These are movies featuring $20 million stars who you can't even see because of all the makeup they're wearing. And my nominee is Battlefield Earth, which starred John Travolta as Turl, a member of the race of Cyclos, who in the year 3000 have conquered Earth.
Attention! This is Terrell, your chief of security. Exterminate all man animals at will. and happy hunting!
Battlefield Earth was bad for a number of reasons, but perhaps its greatest crime was to take a good-looking guy like John Travolta and turn him into the leader of a race of aliens who discovered how to travel across intergalactic space but never learned the first thing about personal grooming. They invented the hyperdrive, but not the fingernail clipper. If you went to this movie hoping to see John Travolta, you had to bring an 8x10 photo into the theater with you.
You know, John Travolta's threatening to make a sequel to this, and to me it's like, you know, if you fall down a flight of stairs and you break a bunch of bones, you don't say, I'm going to climb back up the flight of stairs and hurl myself down again. That's how bad this is. It's just a terrible, and remember how ugly this thing looked when we first saw it?
It was just,
like,
it looked,
where'd all the money go?
I think the movie not only looked cheesy, but the titles looked even cheesier. Kind of green letters that flashed on the screen like something you would do at home on your computer, you know, for Our Day at the Beach or something. Yeah. When the titles aren't impressive, you know they've given up on the movie.
Maybe they were trying to warn us from the very start. Okay, my candidate is the Grinch himself, Jim Carrey, who was slathered in green for the third time in his career after The Mask and Batman Forever. He mugs and preens his way through this role like Robin Williams on stage at the Comedy Store circa 1985. And weirdest of all, his voice makes it sound like he's trying to do a slightly tipsy Sean Connery.
Ah! Almost lost my cool there.
How the Grinch Stole Christmas, of course, has been a huge hit. I still say it's too dark and dreary to become a perennial holiday favorite.
You know, just the other night I was looking again at A Christmas Story, which is one of the greatest Christmas movies of all time, and thinking all of its innocence, all of its joy, all of its cheerfulness, and the Grinch is just a grungy downer. I do not understand why it made so much money, because it seemed to me like it totally lost any kind of Christmas spirit.
Well, it's a triumph of marketing, I think, on one level, and the power of Jim Carrey to bring people into the theaters. So maybe A Christmas Story will continue to pick up momentum and the Grinch will slide down a hill. How about that?
I guess.
Okay, our next category focuses on movies that fail miserably in their attempts to duplicate the cringe-inducing but hilarious scenes in hits such as There's Something About Mary and American Pie. We're calling it Box Office Gross, and my nominee is Road Trip, a tacky college sex comedy with the leering pervert feel of the Porky's movies and a series of gags designed to make you gag.
Better eat him, Mitch, before I do. He's tasty. He's tasty, Mitch.
The fact that Tom Green is willing to put a live mouse in his mouth for his art doesn't make him funny. It just makes him the Pauly Shore of the 21st century. If you're sloppy and disgusting only for the sake of being sloppy and disgusting, you're no funnier than a wet-diapered toddler in a high chair using his fingers to eat a bowl of oatmeal.
Hey, that would be funny. How about if an adult did that? Wait a minute, maybe that happened in this movie.
Probably.
You know, Road Trip is a movie that I have not thought about for 1 second since we reviewed it. And I really resent the fact that you brought it up again here today, because that's the film that just takes up valuable mental real estate that could be used for a more positive purpose. Okay, my nominee in this category is Ready to Rumble, a pro wrestling movie where Michael Buffer gets to shout, "Let's get ready to rumble," a phrase the invention of which must by this point in his career seem like a distinctly mixed blessing. How would you like to go everywhere? Hey, let's hear you say it, Michael. Come on. The movie stars David Arquette and Scott Conn as a couple of wrestling fans who go on the road to mastermind the comeback of their hero, and of course, along the way, they meet a lot of colorful characters.
Running with the devil! Running with the devil! Oh, yeah!
Now, this is a category that zeroes in on gross-out movies, and Ready to Rumble qualifies because of the count them, 2 times David Arquette applies a well-known bodily substance to his hand in order to convince restaurant employees there's something wrong with his food. And there go your popcorn sales right there.
Well, David Arquette and Scott Conn come from famous show business families who, rumor has it, have disowned them after this movie. You mentioned Michael Buffer, though. You say it's a mixed blessing. It's not a mixed blessing. That's his whole career, is saying that. I mean, he has no other career beyond that, so he might as well milk it. We just don't want to hear him or see him say that ever
But I'm
again.
having a little sympathy for the guy, because, I mean, even though it is a career and even though it's a nice living for him, wouldn't you, after a while, just go nuts realizing you can't leave the house without every single person that you see wanting to hear you say that?
Yeah, but Roger, he'd be saying, do you want fries with that if he didn't have that one phrase? So don't feel too bad for him, okay? All right, coming up next, if beauty is only skin deep, here are 2 movies definitely in need of a facelift.
On this special show about the year's worst movies, our next category is named And the Loser Is. And my candidate in this category is Beautiful, a truly incredible movie directed by Sally Field and starring Minnie Driver as a compulsively driven beauty contestant. This woman will do anything to win.
All it takes is focus, aim, and drive.
Cut! Miss Illinois, I've asked you 3 times to gently toss the ball to Miss Texas.
Well, is it my fault if she can't catch?
Okay, now let me ask you a question. I'll try this out on you, Rich. If you were a beauty queen contestant and you had been involved in 4 scandals and you had scarred one of your competitors for life and your roommate and manager was in jail, charged as an angel of death for poisoning little old ladies in a nursing home, and a TV newswoman knows that you have a secret child, what do you think your chances would be of becoming a finalist in a beauty contest?
Well, not since Glenn Close boiled a bunny rabbit have we seen somebody so obsessed. So that's one of the really strange things about this movie, but it's weird from the start.
I know,
and
yeah.
Sally Field directed this. I don't know what she was thinking, but she seems to be really out of touch with anything resembling reality. Now, the first runner-up in this category is Miss Congeniality, which isn't quite as awful as Beautiful, I have to admit. But that's like saying the Miss Hawaiian Tropic pageant isn't quite as cheesy as the competition for Penthouse Pet of the Year. Both of these ham-handed comedies try to elicit sympathy for the neurotic lead characters by showing us scenes from their childhood. Bullock's FBI agent obviously never learned table manners in her tomboy days.
Excuse me, what is your problem?
Problem?
Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, have I offended you in some way? Because quite frankly, you've been completely antagonistic to me since the second I walked in that door.
Now, let's face it, Sandra Bullock is a good dozen years past the age when she'd be the right age for a scholarship pageant. You know what? She's also a great-looking woman. So the only people who are really surprised when she emerges from her Eliza Doolittle makeover are the idiots who work with her at the FBI.
Well, I'm not going to defend this movie, but I will defend Sandra Bullock because she is just innately lovable. And she almost, well, she didn't sell the movie for me. I mean, let's face it, she didn't.
It's a bad movie.
But Sandra Bullock is fun to watch on the screen. And I know that maybe she looks a little old to be going for her college scholarship, but on the other hand, there's a reason why she's in this pageant. She's undercover for the FBI. Yeah. It's not like Minnie Driver, who really is in the pageant, you know, and so you can kind of suspend your disbelief a little bit on that particular plot point.
Okay, if you want to defend Sandra Bullock, find her an agent who gets her better scripts, okay? How about that?
That might be a good idea. Coming up next, our personal selections for the worst films of the year.
Time to reveal our picks for worst movie of the year. And my choice is the vile and moronic Little Nicky, starring Adam Sandler as the spawn of Satan. Maybe that explains Sandler's career. He's got connections down under. Now, this movie cost a reported $80 million to make, but the sight gags and the props and the sets look like they were borrowed from the basement of a cable access station.
Come on, you can do it. There it is. You got it in you.
Doing?
Now, if you think a man with breasts on his head and a talking dog that urinates on cue are the building blocks for a successful comedy, well, first of all, congratulations on getting your TV to work. And yes, Little Nicky is the movie for you. But if I ever meet Adam Sandler in a dark alley in the afterworld, I'll be reminding this guy that he owes me the 84 minutes of my life that were wasted witnessing this dreck.
I haven't had a whole lot of enthusiasm for a lot of Adam Sandler's movies, and you may recall that on this show I said that I thought Little Nicky was actually the best Sandler movie, even though I gave it thumbs down. Right. And amazingly, in the ads, they just quoted the best movie Adam Sandler has ever made, Roger Ebert. You know,
and
I'm
said
thinking,
that though.
But it was bad. You know, I wasn't able to get that in. So I'm glad that you gave me an opportunity to set the record straight. My choice for the worst film of the year is Mike Nichols' What Planet Are You From?, starring Gary Shandling as an alien who is sent to Earth to impregnate a human female and supplied by the scientists on his home planet with a male reproductive organ that for some reason sounds like he has a garbage disposal unit concealed in his pants.
Oh, you're making a noise.
That's my penis. It hums.
Guess it doesn't know the words.
One of the problems with What Planet Are You From is that it starts out as a dirty comedy and then tries to get sweet at the end. Now, Gary Shandling can play the alien, but he can't make the U-turn into sentimental schmaltz. If you're making a movie about a man who has a strange noise coming out of his pants, you ought to cast an actor who looks different when it isn't.
You know, though, I can't help it. I laughed at this movie and I recommended it on the show.
You recommended the worst movie of the year?
I'm standing by it because for whatever reason, I know it's stupid, but Gary Shandling looks like he's from somewhere else and he just made me laugh. And I have to be honest, when I walk out of a movie, if it makes me laugh that much, even if it's just because it's that stupid, I gotta recommend it.
Well, you know, it seemed to me that the idea of having a reproductive organ that sounded like a roto-rooter was funny enough that more could have been done with it than was done in this movie, where it turns into kind of a heartfelt and sweet romantic comedy, you know, where she falls in love with the guy who has the roto-rooter. I mean, I just didn't understand
I'm not saying
that.
it's Annie Hall, okay? All right, remember, you can hear our reviews at Ebert-Roeper-movies.com and read us in print at suntimes.com. That's it for all the bad movies. Next week, we'll be taking a look at some new movies, including George Clooney and John Goodman in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And also Save the Last Dance, starring Julia Stiles. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.
My sister and I are hooked on Alpha Hydrox.
We love it. Our skin looks so soft and smooth, and it feels incredible. It's definitely a keeper.
Alpha Hydrox Skincare.
A house is not a home until it's safe. The Brinks Home Security System, just $99 installed. Call 1-800-GO-BRINKS.
I made that typical New Year's resolution at the beginning of the year that I wanted to lose weight. When I started Tybo, I wore a size 42 pants. Now I wear a size 32. After Tybo, I'm like a whole new person.
Now on pay-per-view, experience The Perfect Store. Right in our path. George Clooney, Mark Wahlberg. The Perfect Store. Order it now on pay-per-view.
Closed captioning for Ebert and Roeper in the Movies is brought to you by...
Everyone's running to America Online new version 6.0.
It's really easy to use. It's fast.
AOL has it all. America Online new version 6.0.